A new report came out that claims that Apple's working on not one, not two, but 6 new devices with mini LED displays. And 3 of those are upcoming Macs expected to launch within a year from now. Let's discuss. So before we jump into what is expected to be updated, what exactly is mini LED? Well, an LED display on a very fundamental level works by having an LED backlight that shines light through a liquid crystal layer of pixels that selectively block light to create color. These liquid crystal displays have a hard time creating blacks and having super high contrast ratios because the LCD can't block all of the light that's passing through. This is where OLED displays excel. Because they light each pixel individually, you can have true blacks and a very high contrast ratio. The downside of OLED is the displays are a lot more expensive and they can suffer from burn-in over a longer period of time. A lot of LCDs have what are known as local dimming zones. Basically, there are sections of the backlight that can be dimmed and brightened to increase the contrast ratio and allow for deeper blacks. For example, Apple's Pro Display XDR has 576 full array local dimming zones, which allows it to achieve a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. However, with local dimming zones, essentially the more the merrier. Because you're going to have less dimming zones than you have pixels, you're not going to be able to perfectly light each individual pixel. So the goal of a mini LED display is to shrink the size of those LEDs down to have over 1,000 local dimming zones on the display. This allows for much higher contrast ratios, better brightness, more power efficiency, and deeper blacks. So basically, it's a very good thing. Now, Apple already has very good displays. They don't have the highest resolution displays out there, but the contrast ratios, the color accuracy, it's all very good. There have been incremental improvements to the display technology, but we haven't seen any major advancements since the Retina MacBook Pro from 2012 and the Retina iMacs from 2014. So it's great news to hear that Apple is clearly planning on implementing mini LED and eventually micro LED, which is a whole other conversation, into their lineup. So now let's talk about what devices are going to be getting these mini LED displays. Well, analyst Ming-Chi Kuo says that there are 6 devices coming out over the next year: a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, 7.9-inch iPad mini, a 10.2-inch iPad, a new 16-inch MacBook Pro, a new 27-inch iMac Pro, and, excitingly, a 14.1-inch MacBook Pro. Ever since the 16-inch MacBook Pro, we've been skeptical in the tech community and on this channel about whether a 14-inch MacBook Pro is actually going to exist. Phil Schiller pretty much swept it under the rug back in November when talking to Jonathan Morrison.
Does this 16-inch MacBook Pro mean a 14-inch update is coming?
No, I wouldn't draw any extrapolation from this to anything else.
But it seems now that we are back on track, a 14-inch MacBook Pro is hopefully in the works. So the 14-inch MacBook Pro is probably what got most of you excited, so let's start by talking about that. Now, lately, Apple's MacBook Pro lineup has been all over the place. It used to be that either once or sometimes twice a year, we would get an update, it would roll out across the board, and that was it. But in 2019, Apple was everywhere. In May of 2019, Apple updated the 15-inch MacBook Pro with 9th gen Intel processors. At the same time, they also upgraded the high-end Touch Bar 4 Thunderbolt 3 port 13-inch MacBook Pro with 8th generation processors. And then in July, they updated the base 2 Thunderbolt 3 port 13-inch MacBook Pro, added in a Touch Bar, 8th generation quad-core processors, and got rid of the function keys MacBook Pro. And then in November, they dumped the 15-inch that had just been updated in May and replaced it with a 16-inch MacBook Pro that also uses the same 9th generation processors. It was a very disjointed process, and there were 4 separate occasions where MacBooks got updated: the 13-inch and the 15-inch, and then a different 13-inch and the 16-inch. The reason I bring this up is that you might be thinking, with this update saying mini LED coming probably towards the end of the year, that we won't see any MacBook updates until that period. However, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Back in January, there was a new filing with the Eurasian database that seemed to suggest that there was a new, smaller, either 13 or 14-inch MacBook Pro coming sometime in the early part of this year, probably in March or May. Where it gets really convoluted is that filing claimed that it was going to have the Scissor Switch Magic Keyboard, which means that it's possible that we could get a 13-inch MacBook Pro with the Scissor Switch keyboard, and then later this year, dump the 13-inch MacBook Pro and get a 14-inch also with the Magic Keyboard. And then there's the whole business of the 27-inch Mini-LED iMac Pro. Now this is very interesting for two main reasons. Number one, a new iMac Pro, yay! I've got an 18-core iMac Pro and I'll tell you that thing is fantastic, but if they were to slim down the bezels, put a Mini-LED display, a little bit better processors, RDNA graphics, ooh, that would be a tasty morsel of a machine. What's curious though is that this report doesn't talk about the normal iMac, which is odd because the iMac Pro and the 5K iMac share a display and a general design aesthetic, by which I mean they are pretty much exactly the same design, but also the iMac Pro is gray. And that also brings up the question of the design. Is this just going to be a new display, leaving the rest of the design intact? That would be a bit of a bummer because the bezels on the iMac Pro need to go. They're too much. What the heck is up with those guys? And keep in mind here that I'm not talking about a major redesign. Literally the only thing that I would change about the iMac is to basically shrink the body to fit that display better with thin bezels, kind of similar in size to the Pro Display XDR. That's it. So apart from the new Mini LED display and hopefully thinner bezels, what else would be new about this hypothetical iMac Pro refresh? Well, most likely it would be sort of like the baby brother to the Mac Pro, which I think is a very compelling idea. We would have current gen Xeon W processors, likely even the same ones that are used in the Mac Pro, though if I had to guess, I would imagine it's probably not going to go up to 24 and 28 cores. And then we would probably also get new graphics. And if I had to guess what those graphics would be, let's take a look at the Mac Pro page. Under the graphics options, there's a coming soon tab that says Radeon Pro W5700X with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6. Basically the Radeon Pro version of a 5700 or a 5700 XT, and I think it's pretty likely that we would see that make an appearance in the iMac Pro, which would be a noticeable improvement over the Vega 64. So new Mini LED displays, RDNA graphics, newer Xeon workstation processors, that seems like a pretty solid update. So that all definitely makes sense and it seems like a logical path. However, there is one thing that could throw a wrench into the whole system, and that is the recent reports about AMD processors that were found in macOS Catalina. Twitter user Rogame found references to codenames of AMD APUs, such as Picasso, Raven, Renoir, and Van Gogh. So while we've all been focusing on an ARM-powered MacBook, which is likely going to be a lower-end Ultrabook like a MacBook Air or a 12-inch MacBook replacement, not on a higher-end MacBook Pro or a desktop, it's definitely interesting to think about an AMD-powered MacBook Pro or iMac Pro. AMD's been absolutely killing the CPU game the last couple of years, and Apple already uses their graphics, so why not just go all AMD? Imagine a Ryzen 9 3950X iMac Pro. Please? But what I think is more interesting is the idea of an AMD APU in something like a 14-inch MacBook Pro. I've been wanting Apple to add some sort of better graphics options to the 13/14-inch MacBook Pro for ages now. Imagine a 4 or even 6-core MacBook with RDNA graphics on an APU. Oh, man, that would be good. That is a real MacBook Pro right there. So that's a lot of information to digest, and we don't really know how it's going to play out. So what I'd like to do right now is a thought experiment. I'm going to apply some precedent of what Apple has done in the past and see how that would play out with this information that we've just received. Apple has already shown that they're willing to update the MacBook Pro multiple times per year, so we could see a new 13-inch MacBook Pro in March or May. Likely this would have 10th gen quad-core CPUs and the scissor switch keyboard from the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Then at WWDC in June, Apple would introduce their Mini-LED technology with a sneak peek of the new iMac Pro. This would have the current gen Intel or possibly AMD processors. It would also feature RDNA graphics, probably a Radeon Pro 5700 or something along those lines, and hopefully a new design with thinner bezels. This is also where we might be able to see a sneak peek at the ARM-powered low-end MacBook. Then either in August or October, we would see a joint update of the 16-inch MacBook Pro and the 14-inch MacBook Pro replacing the 13-inch. This would simplify the lineup a lot. You'd have the 16 and the 14-inch, both with Mini-LED, thinner bezels, the newer design style, and the new Magic Keyboard. And then if precedent is to be believed, the iMac Pro would launch in December. That's probably not all of the updates Apple would do to the Mac. There's probably going to be some sort of normal iMac update, hopefully a new Mac Mini and a refresh to the MacBook Air. That would all have to be thrown in there somewhere, but as far as the information that we were just given, I think that actually makes sense. The only thing that's weird is the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Are they going to do a weird 13-inch and then ditch it in a couple months and do a 14? That's really up for debate, but either way, I would say don't buy a brand new 13-inch MacBook Pro right now. Whether you care about the 14-inch display or not, don't buy a butterfly keyboard in 2020. Stay away from them. So 2020 is definitely shaping up to be an exciting year. Let me know in the comments what you're most excited for and what you think is going to be updated first. And as usual, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Please don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LukeMiani and check out my subreddit, which is linked in the description below. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.